Hi, this is Patrick Bradalato. I wanted to kick off this series on accounting with a quick discussion on the phrase that we've commonly used, and I want to show its importance of speaking of accounting as the language of business. In general, what that represents is that accounting is really not about the process of specific things like journal entries and debits and credits, but much more about a reflection of what's actually happening at the business, and that reflection in financial terms can be extremely valuable once we're willing and able to kind of work through the pieces to understand some of the language that is unique to accounting itself. But hopefully, what we get is that through the lens of accounting, we can truly understand what's happening at a business, whether it's for decision making internally, externally, or an array of different applications. So I want to just kick off by saying the reason we have accounting, and I'll give some great historical examples, is to enable humans to better understand the information related to transactions, to financial dealings, etc., and to use that, knowing that we live in a world of uncertainty, but to use that information that accounting presents to make the best decisions possible. So, with that in mind, I'm assuming that many of you are not aspiring to be accountants. I want to emphasize the role of accounting even for those of us who are not. And to do that, I'm going to give a shout out to an incredible podcast, a specific episode from an incredible podcast that I've listened to, nearly all of the episodes, but not all of them yet. That's Founders Podcast with David Senra. And this is a theme that I actually feel like is being repeated relatively often across the different individuals he covers. The Founders Podcast covers a deep dive into autobiographies and biographies of massively influential people, with the general goal of giving us the opportunity to learn from the unique individuals based on their experiences, their success, their struggles, etc. So this particular one is on Andrew Carnegie, but it actually relates to a few other episodes, and many more than this should be included in this conversation. Here's what I want to emphasize, particularly Carnegie, but also Henry Clay Frick, Jay Gould, Rockefeller, Firestone, lots of others, are individuals who, Sam Walton, I give another example, who were not accountants, but at some point trained themselves in accounting in order to make decisions for the companies that they led. And specifically here, the point that David Senra makes is it's this idea that these massively influential business leaders, started out learning accounting because they thought that was the language of business. And then his last piece there is some specifics of how they get into it. This particular introductory is not going to get into, how do we control cost or anything like that. But that lens, how the lens of accounting that gave him a general understanding of what's actually happening at the business, actual economic events, actual transactions, combining that with an insight into thinking about things in terms of cost and opportunities, was a massive value unlock for these individuals. So we all have that potential to look at accounting not as a series of strict rules to follow or obscure processes that occur, but rather as a lens into what's happening at our business. And through this series, I really want to emphasize that. How does the non-accountant benefit greatly from having an understanding of the business itself through this wonderful system of accounting that depicts what's actually happening? Before we go further, and we'll get into lots of practical, timely applications, I actually want to start off by going backwards and to just remind us where we started, where this all came from. Accounting, fascinatingly, was developed by humans so long ago that we can't attribute it to any particular individual. However, it's been around in society, and its creation was likely related to the fact that humans needed to make decisions with transactions. And these transactions are bartering transactions, the bartering of like livestock and crops and stuff like that, not, currencies and capital markets, long before that. But how do we make transactions that involve aspects like bartering with other societies or groups, whatever else, and still benefit from keeping track of what happened in an economic sense? So the last part of this, I think, is really impactful as well. Accounting preceded two things that we all use and possibly take for granted: the written language and basic elements of math. And that is a fascinating take on how fundamental this is. And that's the fundamental nature of accounting that I want to, weave through these series, which is it's not about complex rules. It's about humans have uncertainty, and the better we have information, and that's what accounting provides, information about business transactions, the better we can navigate the uncertainty, the better we can make decisions. And we'll go through all these applications of this when it comes to specific things like forecasting or valuation or managing our costs, as the prior slide mentioned. But I just want to emphasize it should be a lens that helps us better understand what's actually happening at the business. Another part of the history is Luca Pacioli, and he is seen as like the father of accounting, and he's massively influential in that he standardized the process. His book basically was taking the general ideas at the time, but writing them down and then allowing that knowledge to be disseminated in a far more standardized or codified manner. So massively influential, but not the individual who invented accounting. Accounting is so core to humans that we invented this process long before we had things like the written language or fundamental aspects of mathematics. So that's where I want to begin this journey. Just a reminder that this is not some obscure skill set. This is not some unique thing that only some need. It is a incredibly important opportunity for humans to think about how do we understand what happened at a business, at an entity, and then use that information to best make decisions. That's what accounting is. The language of the business, if we can speak and understand that language, that should open up many opportunities for us. So hopefully this is a good and valuable series for you. This is just the first one. We're just getting started. One down, 10,000 more to go.